Welcome to Wildlife Conversations. I'm Jen Ritchie. I am your host, and I want to welcome you to our 8th episode. I am a wildlife and portrait photographer based in the Midwest, and I started this podcast to be a space where we can hear more voices in this genre and to build community outside of social media. So it is my honor to welcome best-selling author and award-winning photographer, David DuChemin. Welcome, David.
Thanks, Jen. I'm so glad to be here.
It's so glad to have you. You're coming from Vancouver Island, right?
I am.
That's fun. I was just telling you how we'd visited there in our 20s. Probably didn't know what I was missing at that point, but it was beautiful. So beautiful.
It's probably very much the same.
Yes, I cannot wait to get back with maybe with my wildlife lenses now. But I want to remind everybody that we are recording live. We record this podcast live so that people can participate. And if you'd like to say hello in the chat, you can tell us hi and tell us where you're listening from. Say hi to David. And later on, we'll have time for live question and answer, hopefully with David, if you have questions. So just listen for that. And I'm going to try to see if anybody's in the chat talking to us. I don't see my chat. There we go. I don't see anything right now. So maybe I don't have it ready, but that's possible. There it is. Okay, here's people coming. There's people coming. I was like, where is everybody? Usually we have tons of people saying hello. Hi, Carrie. Whew. Oh, there's my mom, David.
Excellent. Yes. If mom shows up, that's all that matters.
You know that's good, right? So here's everybody. Right, it's nice to see everybody's names. I'm used to seeing familiar names on here and so many wonderful people joining us. So thanks, everybody. It's so fun. And happy birthday to my dad. He turned 86 yesterday. I'll say that really quick since I know they're watching. But David, I've heard about your journey to becoming a photographer and read about it. And, you know, it made me think about my own journey. This isn't about me, but it took me a while. I didn't get a DSLR till in my 40s, and that I'm 51 now. So but I don't think I was ready to be a photographer, but maybe was laying some foundation all the way, some creative foundation all the way. But I'm wondering how photography found you and how you knew it was time. You can tell us a little bit about how you got there and how you knew it was time.
Yeah, I think in some ways my journey echoes that of a lot of people. I picked up a camera. Well, I've had a camera in my hand in some form since I was a kid. My father was a Canadian soldier. He was a tank commander in the Canadian military, but also did some photography for the Army, and so I was around cameras. But it wasn't until I was about 14 when just purely on a whim, a neighbor had a garage sale, and I bought a 35 millimeter rangefinder, a German Voigtlander. And it just started spending all my spare money on film and development and figuring this thing out. And, you know, 14 is around the age where everyone's kind of finding a thing. And my thing was not sports. My thing was not music. I didn't know what my thing was. And then I picked up this camera and I was like, I think this is my thing.
Yeah.
And it made sense to me in a way that other things didn't. I liked the ability to sort of, you know, kind of frame the world and make things simple. But it was more than, I think it was an invitation for me. The camera was an invitation to get outside, to do the things that I like doing, but it was kind of added an extra layer to it to be outside. So I've been outside with a camera since I was 14. And I really pursued it hard for a long time. The next year or two, I finally got an SLR. It was used already. It was probably 20 years old by the time I got it. And I started photographing and it made sense to me. And I almost went to school for photography. And then I did a week or so of like job experience, still in high school. And I cleaned the darkroom and I mopped the floors and I filed things. And it was a whole lot of not photography. And I think I had this moment where I kind of realized this is not really what I want to do. And if I become a photographer occupationally, I would in the end probably end up being a wedding photographer. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's not my jam. And
Yeah.
I think I would have lost the love for it. So I
Yeah.
just zigzagged. I went in other directions. I ran off to the prairies and took a theology degree and
Oh, wow.
learned to juggle. And then I did 12 years of comedy and like my
Theology, juggling.
oh yeah, it's my roadmap's been all over the place. And then I quit comedy to be a humanitarian photographer. And
Yeah.
I think my poor mother, she just like she's probably still got whiplash from watching me bounce from pillar to post. But
Oh,
I settled into photography and as a much more mature human being,
right.
I think, less an older human being and it made sense because I'd still been photographing. I was still a photographer. I just wasn't doing it occupationally. And I went to Haiti. I
Mhm.
was still as a I was still a professional comedian, but I went to Haiti and I went for an organization that asked me if I would also photograph. They'd, I guess, been Googling me and wanted to make sure I wasn't a creep. And they said, "Hey, could you bring your cameras?" Which I did. And it was then, after years of being a photographer, that I went, this is what I want to be photographing. I had the tools, but I didn't,
Right.
it's like I had the microphone, but I didn't know what the song was. I didn't know what I
Right.
wanted to be
Exactly.
singing.
Yep.
And within, probably within an hour of being there, within taking a couple of photographs, I was like, this is what I want to do. This is why I do photography.
Hmm.
So it was a bit of a revelation, and I went home and I quit. Within a couple months, I was off the stage for the last time, and
Wow.
within a year, I was working for major clients in the international humanitarian world.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that's kind of, and I continue to zigzag. I continue to bounce around, but
Yeah.
photography has always been the thing that makes sense to me.
Well, you can see all the layers that prepared you for that Haiti trip to just kind of like, this is it.
I think so. I look at all of, because everything I've done has been in communication, and
Hmm.
I see photography as communication,
Hmm.
among other things. And so it was all very, it all just kind of it built on each other. It looks like a big zigzag, but in hindsight, if you
Right.
pull back far enough, it's a pretty straight line.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. Well, even the theology thing is a different way to show beauty. I mean, like all that even prepared you for
It can be.
a
Hmm.
different magic, you know? That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So, what was the nudge from humanitarian, which I mean, I hope everyone has seen your beautiful humanitarian work. It is so beautiful and compelling. And what was the nudge towards wildlife photography and wild spaces?
Well, I mean, a lot of the places in which I was doing humanitarian photography, Sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast
Hmm.
Asia, there
Hmm.
were wildlife opportunities. I grew up in a canoe in Canada. I've always been in the
Hmm.
wild. I grew up around bears and moose and that sort of thing.
Wow.
But a couple things happened. One, there was a growing dissatisfaction, maybe a cynicism about the world. The
Mm.
humanitarian space is a pretty dark corner from which to view the world. So there was that, and there was sort of a need for me to find, I went years ago, went to Iceland, started doing landscapes just as a way to kind of cleanse my palette and not be photographing in really difficult contexts.
Yeah.
And I just realized that I really needed some of that. But there was a whole other layer, and that is that if you are concerned about the plight of humanity, you must also necessarily be concerned about the plight of the rest of the planet.
Yeah.
The greatest setting aside conflict issues, which often rise out of poverty and that rises out of environmental issues.
Yes.
Many of our biggest humanitarian crises come out of the repercussions of how we've treated this planet, and I do believe that we protect what we love,
Yeah.
and so slowly I started to shift. And one day I woke up and it probably took me longer to figure this out than most people. I woke up one day and went, yeah, I think I'm a wildlife photographer now. That's the thing that I want to pursue.
Yeah.
Less, and COVID was helpful in that because I was less and less interested in
Yeah. I wonder about
photographing
that.
in crowded contexts. And I love dusty, dirty places. I love the press of people in India and that sort of thing. But increasingly, I think I came out of COVID going, I'd
Right.
rather sit on a rock in the rain and wait for a bear,
In
you
wide
know?
open spaces. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was wondering if COVID had anything to do with that, because it did change a lot of people's um, minds of what they were doing in life. I'm going to share a screen really quickly here to show some of this wildlife photography as we're talking. It's so beautiful, that light glinting there on that salmon. That's gorgeous. So I really resonated even with your first. We're going to talk about your new book today, Light, Space, and Time, which I showed you earlier is just like bookmarked with tons of post-its. So much of it resonated with me. But even those first couple paragraphs where you talked about why don't we talk about creativity as photographers? You know, we can often talk about gear and tech and all those things, and where is the creative process in photography? Why don't we talk more about it? And that really resonated with me as an English teacher in the past and a writer. Those things are like that creativity has really pulled me out of a lot of, I think, stuck places. So
Hmm.
I just wondered why do we not talk about creativity more with photography in our photography books and
Oh,
magazines and posts?
I have, Jen, I have all kinds of ideas. One, I think, well, we get stuck in a bit of a rut, and the technical is the first challenge we face as photographers. Before you even have the luxury of having a conversation about creativity, you do need to learn your tools, and
Yes.
that can be quite a challenge. And so we get in this rut where it's easy to talk about, the 600 millimeter lens you just bought, or
Right.
the latest thing you learned in Lightroom. Those things are important. But it doesn't take a lot of vulnerability to talk about, I don't hear a lot of people saying, gosh, I'm really struggling, to use my 600 millimeter lens, or gosh, I lie awake and I thinking about how to use my tripod. Like it doesn't require an awful lot of transparency of the soul to talk about those things. Whereas having conversations about finding our voice, about the way that so many of us feel like imposters, the way we feel
Hmm.
some days like we're inadequate to the task, these are things that require some, I think, strength of character and vulnerability to have those conversations. And to be honest, on some level, the minute you start talking about yourself as an artist, it feels a little bit sort of self-aggrandizing.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think it should. I think,
And it's hard to
just
do.
saying that, well, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And, but I am an artist. That doesn't mean I'm necessarily a good artist. And it certainly doesn't mean I'm saying I aspire to be.
Yeah.
But these are conversations that are more challenging to have. And they're so personal.
They are.
I think we have conversations around common ground, and that's the gear stuff. That's the easy stuff. It's harder to have a conversation about the stuff that's fuzzy around the edges,
Yeah.
the creative stuff, composition, storytelling, it's not easy. And
Yeah.
so we settle on but I think what an opportunity when we can talk about those things to get us into bigger spaces, and realize, like, I did this podcast for, I don't know, 3 years, 2 years, called A Beautiful
Yes.
Anarchy. And the whole thing, every episode, I wanted to make sure that I reiterated the fact that you're not alone if you feel this way. You're not the only one that struggles with this, because I think as creatives, I'm very much a lone wolf. I spend a lot of time by myself, even if I'm photographing animals and there are other people beside me. I'm still very much in my own little world. It's me and the bear, even though there's,
Yeah.
a person on either side. And I'm looking at, there's people here that I photographed with. Andre is here. Andre, hi.
I
Um,
see Eve is
you're
here too.
still you're still by yourself, right?
Right.
And it is a very inner kind of world, but we're all experiencing the same things. If you care deeply about this stuff, if you are trying new things, these are necessary kind of concerns and worries. And um, because I'm not really well equipped to talk about technical stuff. I know my craft. I think I know it very well, but the really technical stuff, I'm not the guy to talk about it. So
Yeah.
it's kind of when you're finding your own voice as a human being, it's like, well, I can talk about this stuff. Maybe that's what my theology degree gave me, is time doing counseling courses, time.
Yeah.
Have spent more time staring at my belly button, contemplating the nature of the universe and my place in it, that maybe I'm just a little more equipped to instigate those conversations. But I think we all want to have them.
Yeah.
Once we feel like there's God, I can't believe I'm going to use these words, but a safe place in which to do that.
Yeah.
I think photographers are hungry to talk about creativity and getting more. Surely there's more that is possible with our art than just making
Yeah.
really sharp photographs.
Yeah.
There's got to be something more.
Yeah. Well, it took me a while to believe that I had a voice, that I could give myself permission to be an artist, to artist. That was so scary to say. But in 2015, I had gone through some stuff and I decided I'm writing my own book. I'm going to write my own book. And I just started writing, and the discipline of sitting down every day, it's painful, but you talk about flow in your book, and you'd reach that flow state. And it was just so healing and filled. And then gave myself permission to try a writing intensive course for a year and a half with a group of 6 great people who looked at my work and read my work, and we critiqued each other and supported each other. And I thought, I I can do this. I am a writer. I am a creative. My brother was always the artist one in the family. And I thought, no, I've been writing all my life. I've been reading all my life. I've been looking at photography and magazines and Vogue magazine all my life. And I thought, it took me a while to give myself
Mm,
permission. And then at the same time had a part-time job that put a camera in my hand. And like you said, once that camera was in my hand, it was just like I'm an introvert. I think maybe you are too. And
deeply.
it's like,
Yeah.
yeah. And there was something about that camera in front of my face that gave me sort of this bravery,
Mm,
courage to move through the world in a different way. And, of course, wildlife photography is just, I think, like you said, it's been there since you were young, and it's just a way to sit alone and express yourself. But that magic happens and you can't help it.
mm.
But I hope other people can find ways to give themselves permission that they have a voice and something to say. I think your book definitely helps with that. That's the message to me, is that the freedom to give yourself permission to create.
I hope so. I mean, I think we hunger for it so deeply that it doesn't take much to nudge people over the edge.
Yeah.
I think it's there in most people. Some people, I did have I had a friend who quite wisely once said to me, I was ranting about something, foolishly, blah blah blah, and he said, David, remember that because there's always, poet warrior nonsense, and every now and then I need to be brought back to earth, and he said, remember, there are people that, because he's a musician,
Hmm.
he said there are people that that play guitar to make music, and there are guitar collectors, and there's
Yes.
nothing wrong with either.
Yeah.
And there are people that are into the gear and the tech for its own end, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But they're not reading my stuff. That's for darn sure. They're not reading they're not reading my contact sheet emails. They're not reading my
How
blog.
does it feel? How does it make you feel?
And they're like, they just want to talk hyperfocal distance and things, just like, we're in two different worlds, and that's fine. But those that know, those that hunger for more, those that feel, they know it, and they just, to have someone that says, hey, you're not alone. I think that's all it takes for them to go, yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
needed to hear. And then welcome to the angst, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But in a good way. I had one guy once, he said to me, he goes, David, I can't read your stuff anymore. I'm so, how did he put it? He goes, I'm so tired of all the angst, or something like that. And I'm like, you're tired. I'm exhausted. I mean, try being me. I think as I've aged, the angst has become it's become a little gentler, a little more
Yes.
graceful, I hope.
Yes.
But it doesn't disappear, because you never get to a point. I get emails to say, surely after 15 books and whatever, you're not as afraid. Or I'm like, no, I'm more afraid, because I have more to lose, and because I still care, and because I don't
Yeah.
want to repeat myself.
Yeah.
Um, I every day am a new person, and so I face new fears. I face, because I'm trying to accomplish new things, and I think we're all like that. None of us want to just like figure out our thing and then hit repeat every day for the rest of our lives.
Right.
So that's why it's always a little worrisome. That's why there's fear. That's why we are imposters, because we've never, whatever thing we're trying to do this time, we haven't done that before.
Right.
Right? We have a skill set that we're learning, that's growing, and so we should have a little bit more confidence. But I don't think that wipes away the feeling that I am faking it till I make it. But the
Right.
problem is then we're like, but everyone else, they've got it figured out. You know, I
That's
still
the
look at
thing.
everyone
Yes.
else and I'm like, oh man, and so comparison, things like this, we need to have conversations about that, as well as more creative, like the actual stuff, like the
Yeah.
storytelling and the composition. We need to talk about that and get away from the rules. And um, my voice in the photography world is, I hope, is to talk about the human stuff, not
Yeah.
about the camera stuff, because
Yeah.
I don't know how these damn things work to begin with. I just know that, you know, there's a few buttons. I probably know how to use about 5% of what my camera can
Well,
do.
there's a
And
lot.
right. And I know, but I know that 5% really well. And
Yeah.
that's all I need. And that 5% will be different from person to person. And some people will know 50%. Great. I don't have the time.
Yeah,
All
that makes
I,
me feel better. I'm the same way. I mean, I feel like, oh my gosh, there's so much to know. And
There
I,
is a lot to know,
yeah,
but you only have to know what you need to know,
right.
right? I don't need to know how my intervalometer, I don't even own an intervalometer, but if I did, I don't know, maybe my camera has one inside. I don't know. But if one day I went, you know what, I really need to understand how, then I can go to Google, I can YouTube it. And within 10 minutes, some
Yeah.
nerd out there who's super skilled at this stuff and can communicate and teach this stuff well, will inform me.
Yeah.
I will figure it out, and then I'll go figure out how I best use an intervalometer, um, which I don't really know what it does, but I'm sure if it was important to me, I would. Just as like 2 years ago, I started doing stuff with remote triggers
Yes.
because it was an easier, well, it was the only way to get my camera where I wanted it to be, and you know, it took some figuring out and some trial and error and buying the wrong thing, and but eventually I figured it out. In fact, that's a great example. That was one of my first successful remote camera shots.
It's really
And
fun.
I was probably just about, I don't know, maybe I was 15, 16 feet away. I was sort of in the bushes, and I just kind of said, you know, hey bear. And he looked up and, you know, and then carried on. So you still have that intimacy of experience. It's just the camera's in a slightly different place, but I didn't know how to do that initially. I didn't know what the gear was, and
Yeah.
but that stuff you can figure out. Everything's figure outable.
Yeah.
Um, it's just maybe insufficient. It's not the point of the whole thing for most of us.
Yeah. Well, you talk about giving yourself restraints and constraints, I mean, and problems to solve. And that's what creatives do. So when you're learning to use that remote shutter, that's a new way to move your creative journey forward, right?
Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
give yourself challenge. Creativity is almost, it's like a muscle that needs to be, you know, that needs to be pushed. And
Mm.
you don't go to the gym and keep lifting 5 pound weights. You lift 5 and then 8 and then 10. And, you know, and that's how you build the muscle. And it's the same with creativity. It needs a challenge to solve. And so every time I go out, though there is an increasing feeling of confidence in certain areas, there's always okay, what's the new thing I'm going to try?
Right.
What's the new, because there are holes in my work, because there are things that, okay, this set of photographs does this well, but it doesn't do this. So for example, the remote trigger was a response to me feeling like there wasn't the intimacy. I have a lot of long lens shots, and I think, I mean, those long lenses they're such a gift. But if I could only use one lens, it'd be like, I want my 16 to 35.
Wow. Okay.
Um, I want to be there. Yeah. And I want people
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
feel there. And there are ways to do that with long lenses, but
Yeah.
you know, we were all looking for ways to kind of find that voice. And if I could only do one thing, I'd shoot wildlife with my 16 to 35, because my
Yeah.
work is about encounters, my work.
Yeah.
And the reason I do any of this is because I want to be there. I want to feel in the presence of a thing. Looking at a thing is not the same as being
Being there.
in the presence of a
And
thing and
bring your viewer
encountering
there too.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I felt like there was a hole in my work. There was an opportunity to learn something new, and I didn't know if it was going to work, but you know, figured it out. And I had some people all along the way that know this stuff better than me that went, hey, try this and try that. And I tried, and this worked and that didn't.
Yeah.
That's the way it works. That's how we move forward, you know.
Yeah.
Um, I, there's a quote by Bill Watterson. It's not really a quote, it's an idea. Bill Watterson, who did the Calvin and Hobbes comics for years and eventually just kind of stopped. And he stopped because he said, I felt like I was starting to mow the same patch of grass twice. And I don't think many of us find a lot of satisfaction. There's no risk there.
I was gonna say.
And I talk about risk in the book, but
Mhm.
there's also no reward compared
Right.
to trying that new thing and finally getting that shot where you're like, yes, oh my God, I did it. You
Yeah.
know, that feeling of like, I'm not after pictures that are like, they're fine, they're okay. For me, a picture is either a hell yes or a no. Which makes editing a lot easier because
Yeah.
I'm not worried about like, is that a 2-star or a 3-star? Maybe it's a 4. I don't know. Is it, I'm like, it's either a yes or no.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some days my response is different, you know, and you grow, some of those images that used to be a hell yes, you look at them and go, yeah, maybe it's time to replace them. Maybe they don't do what I wish that they would do, because I long for different things now because
Right.
I'm a photographer who's 5 years grown past that point.
That's what I'm saying.
So
Growth.
it's a
You're
very
seeing the growth.
fluid. Yeah.
Yeah, you're seeing the growth. Well, light, space, and time talks about just not that, well, it doesn't, it's not a technical book, but it talks about the language of the camera and how the camera sees. So that helped me because I thought, okay, that's where I need to take risk. That's where I need to push myself forward instead of just doing like what you said, the repetition. I need to start taking some risk and really understanding how my camera works in light, space, and time and asking myself those questions. So, um, can you explain to us a little bit, explain to people who haven't read, hopefully they'll buy your book and read it, but what do you mean by the camera's language?
So yeah, so I start the book off with this conversation because and again, the book is not really like, it's not one thing. There's 20 essays about camera craft and
Yes.
creativity, and some of
Yes.
them, you know, connect with this idea and some are about other things. But for me, I had a moment. I'm always teaching. I'm always trying to find new ways to teach this stuff. My mom said, "What's this book about?" I'm like, "Mom, it's about the same thing all my other books are about. I'm just trying to find different words to express it and different ideas." But I start with this idea of light, space, and time because, well, let me back up. How many
Okay.
of you that are listening have had another photographer usually that looks at one of your pictures and goes, "Yeah, but did it really look like that?" And they're questioning the whole reality behind the image. And a lot of the time, the answer, most of the time, it's like, well, who are you asking? Because no, not really. It felt like that. But did it look like that to the camera? Sure, it did.
Mhm.
But everything from, so in terms of light, our camera sees light differently than we can. We can't underexpose a scene by 3 stops. We just see the way we see, and our eyes kind of adjust for a perfect exposure. Whereas the camera is like, if you tell it, I want you to underexpose by 5 stops and see the light in a different way, it will do that. If you ask it to see space through a different lens, through a different aperture, like a shallow depth of field at 1.8 when you're photographing, let's say it's a portrait or something quite close. No, it didn't look like that, not to my eye, because my eyes
Right.
got much greater depth of field. And the same thing with time. Did it really look like that? Well, no, because I set the camera to like a 15th of a second, and so it captured that motion blur in a way that
Yeah.
my eye can't perceive, but I felt it. It felt that way.
I'll
And
show you
so,
a
and
picture
there's
here.
there's opposites of all of this. We don't have infinite depth. Here's the rhino is a great example. I
Yeah.
mean, I maybe, I mean, it's a great example of a lot of things. I shot these 2 rhinos battling it out for, I don't know, probably an hour. I shot 3,000 frames and I got one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I
Mm-hmm.
got two, but this is the one that I really like.
Mm-hmm.
But did it look like this? A, it wasn't in black and white. B, I wasn't that close. It was like the rhinos were out there and I just had probably not even 600. I probably had like my 1.4 on there, so 800 and change. But all of these things, these are the ways that camera sees, not the way I see. And so you are learning a different language. You're learning to collaborate with this technology that can interpret light, space, and time in ways that we can't. So where that is helpful to me is when I'm at a scene and I'm stuck, or I'm asking myself, well, where where do I start? Start with light, space, and time. What can I do with the light? What's the light doing? What can I do with it? What have I got spatially that I can work with, either tightening things up with a long lens or expanding things with a wider one, getting closer, moving my point of view, getting low. Can I draw the shutter? Can I drag it so that I'm capturing some of that motion through time? Or is this one of those situations where it's really important that I'm at 8,000th of a second? Or if you do this kind of thing, putting a flash on and dragging the shutter and doing rear curtain sync and capturing, like these are the ways that our cameras can speak about light, space, and time, which are our raw materials. So that's where the paradigm kind of came from, is just trying to find a way to communicate to photographers a new way of thinking about what we do.
Yeah.
Because again, we most of us, and I start the book talking about, that I think I learned photography kind of backwards, and I compare it to learning French, at French immersion, where I was expecting certain things. And when we learn the camera, we learn the technical, we do not learn the creative. And the possibilities are all there. We need to learn that part too.
Yeah. And so how important is curiosity then when it comes to photography?
I think curiosity is everything. I mean, curiosity is the thing that prompts you to ask what if.
Right.
And what if is the question in creativity. What if I try this? What if I try that? What if I wait a little longer? What if I put on a different lens? What if I get the camera down low? You don't always know. The mistake is not trying because you haven't yet answered your question. You answer the what if question by putting on that wide lens, by getting down low, by dragging the shutter. And it's curiosity that gets you there and pushes you to take risks. It doesn't always. I could have shot 3,000 pictures of those rhinos and not got anything, like just junk, lots and lots of junk. And I did get lots of junk, but I got that one, and I'm thrilled with it.
Yeah.
I didn't need a dozen safe shots of those rhinos. I've got lots of pictures of rhinos. I wanted one that I hadn't done before. I wanted one that captured something that I couldn't have captured, I don't think, in any other way. And so a separate conversation, but people talk about keeper rates all the time. There cannot be a worse way to talk about art making than keeper rates. My keeper rate's getting worse. Like as I take more risks, as fewer images satisfy what I'm trying to do, my keeper rates, I used to come back from a month in Kenya with like 50 images that I loved, and now I'm coming back with like 12.
Yeah.
It's going downhill, folks. Like I'm going in the wrong direction, except I'm not. I'm going in the right direction. How many pictures do I need? I would rather come back with 12 that make me go, oh my God, like I didn't even think I had a shot at this. I don't know if you have it there, but there's a vertical shot of a leopard cub, quite a young leopard cub.
I think I do have that. I'll put that up. Yeah.
I was shooting this in South Africa. I had a very limited window, and there were vehicles that were sort of competing. They wanted to get in, and it was a spot where only one truck could be in. And my guide was like, we gotta give others a chance. I said, that's great. You pull out whenever you're ready. And we were almost pulling out. And the rain had finally come just a little bit. The dung beetles were out. And this leopard was like captivated by these dung beetles. And I happen to think dung beetles are fantastic. And honest to God, I had no chance in hell of getting this shot. But I tried, because I'm like, wouldn't it be great, because she was pouncing, and and there was brush and shrubbery, and there was one frame where I had several with the beetle in the shot, but not sharp, not in focus. And I had one frame where she looks up, just the tip of her tongue is showing, and that beetle is tack sharp. And I was just like, if I had missed, I was in Zimbabwe and South Africa. I was gone for almost 3 weeks. If I'd missed every shot except for this one,
it's gorgeous.
I would have come home happy.
So fun.
Because you know, it's when you abandon the idea of safety in creativity and you start taking risks, that's when cool stuff happens. Lots of garbage happens too, but
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
the grease, you know, that's what we need to grease the wheels that finally get us to the shot that makes us go, "Oh my God, I love that."
Yeah, that makes me feel better. I feel like I am coming away from every trip like a little more frustrated, but maybe I shouldn't see it that way. I should see it as, well, it's growth. You're a little more picky now, you're risking more, you're trying more. So maybe that's the way to look at it instead of
It is.
frustration.
But the frustration is not a bad thing. I mean, the
True.
frustration is the recognition that a space has opened up in front of you,
Yes.
that you haven't figured out how to fill yet. It
Yes.
comes from a dissatisfaction. It comes from um, just the recognition that there is something still to be learned and accomplished, and that's where we do our best work. Because flow always there has to be an element of challenge there. We do not do our best work when we're just mailing it in.
Yeah, I
We don't.
love that
We
you
need
said,
that.
I think you said friction sparks the creative
Yeah,
process.
very much. We absolutely need that. We need that kind of like
Yeah.
Um, so if everything's going too well for me, I get a little suspicious. Don't get me wrong, it feels kind of nice.
Yeah.
But I start kind of looking over my shoulder going, okay, well, what am I doing wrong here? Because I know my best work if I'm too comfortable, I'm not going to come home with my best work. I need
Yeah.
that. I don't think this is going well to
Yeah.
push me and to drive me. And again, it's not angsty. There is a comfortable discomfort, if that makes any
Right.
sense, where you're like, but again, it is, you don't necessarily know that you're getting those shots. Like I had no idea I got that leopard shot
Right.
until I started, part of the creative process is the edit itself and working through it and going, and, what changes can I make to this image to, and can I get rid of that little friggin' branch that's right in the way? And
Yeah.
sometimes you don't know until you get it back from the printer and you go, oh my God, yes,
That is so cool.
But the price of that is five other prints that you get back and go, oh,
It's not it.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
okay.
But repetition, even though it can, I think I was thinking of repetition in my own as like practice, that I'm practicing those skills. But
Hmm.
once you hit that plateau, that's when you need to pay attention to that, what you're saying, the frustrations and the open spaces that need to be worked out, and push forward and try and try and try and try again until you
Yeah,
hit
I
that magic.
repetition in terms of what we do with the camera in our hands is absolutely vital.
Hmm.
You need it to be so comfortable with the camera that parts of it feel intuitive.
Hmm.
That's good repetition. I think where repetition is not so good is in the thing that we are making, that we just go to the same comfortable devices, that we,
Yeah.
find formulas, and it's like, okay, wide angle, pushed in close, prominent foreground element, or with wildlife photographers, it's very often that put the biggest lens I have on, fill the frame with the face, get that portrait shot. Okay, well, but after you've been doing that for a while, is it
Yeah.
still satisfy? Maybe it does. Maybe
Yeah.
absolutely it does. For me, I've got to a spot where I'm like, okay, I got a lot of those.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
this for me now the sexy shot is harder because it's animal small in context. There's more
Hmm.
scale. It's
Hmm.
harder to control all the elements. But it's that like lone wolf on a rock, like quite distant, that makes me really happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas before it was like, I gotta get that, but I got that tight shot. How many tight
Yeah.
shots do I need of
But
every
David,
damn wolf?
the environmental shots don't do well on Instagram.
No, they don't. They don't. But and this is part of the problem is
Yes.
Instagram is training us. I think Instagram is, and I'm back on Insta, and there are good conversations to be had, but Insta is as a medium, it's hostile to photography.
Yeah.
It encourages the same old homogeny. But I don't want to be too down on it. It's just certainly on a small screen where we're just scrolling.
Yeah.
There are some images like the work of Ed Bertinsky, who does these incredible big, like it's not wildlife, but it needs to be big, like
Hmm.
they
Hmm.
just need to be big, and
Yes.
you can put them on Insta, but it's like
It
it's not going
doesn't
to play
translate.
well.
Right.
That's
So
okay.
how does conformity and like all this sameness, how is this affecting us on Instagram? How does this affect our own ability to create and our curiosity?
I don't know. It makes us
This is
scared.
too depressing.
No, I mean, it, comparison is, as someone wiser than me has said, is the thief of joy.
Yes.
And it's not hard to, especially when we pick up the phone because we want that dopamine hit.
Mm,
We pick it up and we see a photograph that, frankly, we don't know the backstory. We don't know how many years and how hard it was, but we look at it and we're like, I just want to throw my stuff in the ocean. Like, that's just too good. And I talk about this in the book. It's one thing to look at the work of another photographer and learn something and let it push you into trying new things, because you're like, my work doesn't have that. It doesn't have that feeling of whatever. I want to try to do that. That's learning, and I think that's positive. But when we compare ourselves to other photographers without knowing the backstory, without knowing how challenging it is, without knowing their own journey, and
mm,
making all kinds of assumptions about how great life is for them and how hard life is
yeah.
for us, I think we just need to be very careful about managing that stuff,
Yeah.
because we make a sliver of the story into the whole story.
Yeah.
And we read that as a whole story, and then again compare it to ours. We compare their sliver to our whole pie, and it's,
Yeah.
that was a terrible analogy, but I think it, on some level, it works,
It does.
now I want pie. But
Well, I
I
think you
think we
said
just
it.
need to be careful. We
Yeah.
need to be mindful. Nobody goes, well, if you're smart, you don't go into the field with a bag full of empty batteries. And I think, creatively, you got to be mindful of what charges your battery and what drains them.
Mhm.
And I think we pay more attention to our camera batteries than we do to the actual creative engine that runs this thing. And that's, I mean, I point to here, but it's up here. And
Yeah.
we need to be mindful of the brain rot and the doom scrolling. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying don't do it, because I do it. I'm just saying also do other things that
Yeah. I
really
think you say
truly recharge.
study, not don't scroll, something like that.
Yeah, study, don't scroll,
Yeah.
and I mean, that's a, I think, a great way of looking at it. I think also just being mindful of your inner life. What
Yeah.
books are you reading, for
Right.
example, about natural history? If we're having a conversation about wildlife photography, not everyone gets, their thing from reading, but I do. And I read voraciously because it informs me, it teaches me new things. I read a whole book about dung beetles, and I love dung beetles. They're fascinating.
Well, there's
But
that
that's a whole other.
curiosity. Yeah, but
Yeah.
something that really convicted me when you said that and towards the end was when you're spending so much time scrolling quickly, thousands of images, you're giving up the time to sit quietly and really look and study an artist or, like you said, natural history for an hour and really think and study. And it kind of was like, oh, yeah, like I'm addicted to this thing. I keep picking it up and scrolling instead of sitting down in a corner and really studying the works of a great photographer. So that for me was kind of a goal for 2025 is to, okay, stop this and let's get back to your inner life, the reader you used to be, and try to get rid of this addiction, of picking up my phone without even thinking. And I want to think about it. What you said, what you think about matters, what you think matters. It's like, yeah,
Mhm.
what I think matters, and it adds to my photography. Um,
It,
all of
it,
my
it
life adds
absolutely
to it.
will. And pragmatically, if you're photographing wildlife and you understand more about how wildlife works, you
Mhm.
will, photographers have forever said behavior is everything. If you
Yeah.
understand animal behavior, you will understand. I mean, how many of us now, after years of photographing certain animals, understand that this thing, whatever it is that we're seeing, for example, when a bird, kind of, you're watching an eagle, when an eagle kind of, does this thing, and, that's most often an indication that the bird's about to fly.
Mhm.
Understanding the behavior, understanding when you're looking at lion cubs, that the minute a lion cub, looks up at a tree, he's probably going to climb up that little tree. Like there are certain, and so exposing yourself to that, reading books, who knows, like, So here's what I'm going to make a book recommendation. When you go on to Amazon today, I'm talking to everyone out there. When you go on to Amazon today to order your copy of Light, Space, and Time, I want you to also put, you like the way I did that?
Yes,
See what I did
great.
there? I want you to also consider putting a book called An Immense World into your cart and buying it. Don't just leave it there, buy it. It's by a guy named Ed Young. Uh, and it is fantastic. Oh my God, it is so well written, but it's about, and here's where it all intersects, because it's about how animals perceive the world around us.
Mhm.
Photographers are always talking about, learning how to see, and I like to talk about learning to see how the camera sees, which I talk about in my new book, Light, Space, and Time. But An Immense World is
Hold it up.
all, thank you for the visual. An Immense World is all about how animals perceive the world through echolocation and electricity and magnetism and different spectrums of light and vibration. And oh my God, it's fantastic. And if you love wildlife at all, seeing the world, seeing in quotation marks, perceiving the world through their eyes, feet, mouth, taste, whatever their senses are, it blew my mind. It was
Yeah.
such a good book.
Yeah.
So
I had that on hold.
treat yourself and order both of those.
I had that on hold at one point for the library, and life happens and it was gone. But I had that at one point on my list. But I think he has another book similar to that too, if I remember right. But I'll have to
Yeah,
look
I
it up.
think the one that precedes that was all about the world inside us. Is all about like organisms. I
Hmm.
don't know. I haven't read it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's on a micro level.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
An Immense World's more a little bit bigger. It's about dolphins and elephants and I mean, a lot of small things too. I mean, I didn't realize that like mosquitoes taste with their feet,
Oh
like
wow.
stuff
Yeah.
like that.
That's
I got
cool.
done the book and it was just
Mind blown.
really, truly. And it to sit with elephants, to sit with wolves, bears, any of these, and just it has given me a new appreciation for how they must perceive the world, how they talk to each other, and our place in that. And if, in fact, orca and other whales are so sonic dependent, what are we doing to their world with all these engines and sonic blasting and sonic exploration, seismic stuff? I think it helps us become more. The book has helped me become more empathetic,
Yeah. Yeah.
and more concerned in
Yeah.
my pursuit of wildlife.
Yeah. How important is awe and wonder and listening to our emotional response as we're out in the field?
I can't answer that for anyone else, but it's what drives me. I go out, I think that feeling of awe, I think it's connected, awe and wonder are connected to curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
But it's why I do what I do. I don't go to make a photograph per se. I mean, it's nice that it results, but let's face it, at the end of my life, my photographs, they're not going to really move the needle for anyone but myself. Um, but the experience of being there and experiencing a world, a creature, a moment that's bigger than myself, I think is healthy. I think it puts us in our rightful place on this planet.
Yeah.
So I can't answer that for other people. I don't know pragmatically. I don't, I'd never even thought of it that way. But, but I don't look at wonder and awe as pragmatic
Right. Right.
things. I look at them as like, that's the feeling I want to feel when I'm out there.
Yeah.
And it's one of the only things that pushes away some of the despair that I feel, some of the cynicism, all the negative things that come from being a human being on this planet and
Yeah.
life not going the way you want it to. And,
Yeah.
to be in the presence of these things and feel that wonder
Yeah. I
it's why I
totally
do it.
agree. Totally agree. You say to get up that early in the morning and get up and go do this. It is the magic that keeps us going out there. Those amazing moments that happen that you're like, how in the world am I seeing this? That it's like a
And,
liminal space where you're
and
seeing this magic.
oh, you get 10 points for using the word liminal. I love it. Let me just turn on my heater. It's getting cold in here. Um, I agree. And even though 4 o'clock comes so early sometimes, well, it always comes early, feels
Mm-hmm.
really early.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Even when you don't find the thing, the leopard, the wild dogs, the bear, to be out there and experiencing the weather and the light, and
Yeah.
when the rest of the world is asleep. I think there's
Yeah.
something beautiful about that, and calming. Again, it
Absolutely.
is part of our inner life. I think we need those times to settle and to find our calm in something other than this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we talked about curiosity and the magic, but you also talk a lot about not getting the not getting the research shot right away, that first shot. It's often about patience, time, sketching, and you say your memory cards and your hard drives are your notebooks. I loved that line. Loved that line.
Thank you.
Um,
Yeah, I call them sketch images. I
yeah.
think there's value in, because the creative process is, and maybe this is where we, start talking about actual creativity. Pragmatically, I think the
Hmm.
creative process, we need to understand how it works. It's not always predictable. It's not always A leads to B leads to C, and then I get the prize at the end. Um, Depending on how you define the prize. But
Yeah.
it is iterative, and so when you show up at a scene, and your first instinct is to put this lens on rather than that lens, to sit here and not there, um, I'm very suspicious of my first instincts. I've learned as I've gone through life that I'm a bit of a moron, and so I need that time to get the camera in my hand, and even if the thing has not yet shown up, take a picture and go, okay, wow, if there were a wolf in this space on the frame, this distance, okay, that balance wouldn't be very good. I need to move a little bit here, or maybe I need to stop thinking 600 millimeters and start thinking
Mm-hmm.
24 millimeters. Maybe, and then you spend a little time and you're like, oh, well, look, if the light did this, and and then you turn and go, well, actually, the light's way better over here. Like these, it's not just I need to sit there until the thing arrives, until the bear gets it's I need to sit there until I can see this scene clearly. When I have a sense of what the possibilities are, where I've got out of my own way. Um, so for me, it's this iterative, you need time, not just
Yeah.
like, yeah, like I always say, if you can go to a place for a week, see if you can go for two. If you can go for only a day, see if you can stretch it to 2 or 3 days. If you've only got an hour, well, see if you can find a way to make it 2 hours, because that time, it's time to get out of your own way. It's time to have new perceptions. It's time to go, oh, it's not just this, it's this and that. it's
Mm,
it's not just moving over to here, it's moving over to here and putting on a different lens and shooting horizontally instead of vertically. And very few of us are as instinctive as we like to think we are. I think
yeah.
we arrive at these better photographs. When I do an edit, I often, especially for a day, if I'm been shooting scenes, I'll go to the end of that bulk of shots, because it's usually crap, 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 slowly getting better, but still crap, getting better, getting better. And then there's this moment where you can almost see it in the picture where it's like, oh yeah, that's where you finally realized what was going on here.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
usually the last one to know, and that's reflective often in the final photographs. Not the last ones, because I don't just go, oh, I got the shot and give up.
Right.
But
Right.
there's a curve. It's like it gets better, it gets better, it gets better. And then usually the moment has passed, the light has gone, and there's sort of a bit of a
Mhm.
denouement, that's evidence in the last few frames. But I know that about myself now, and I know that I need more time, and not just for things to happen. There is an idea in the book that a great photograph happens at the intersection of light, space, and time. When the light is great, when things are happening in that space at the right time.
Mhm.
Um, you sometimes need to wait a while. Any of us doing wildlife photography know that it's very rare you just show up, sit on the rock, and the bear shows up. It's like,
Right.
well, the bear got the message. Once in a while, it
He's
happens,
here.
right? But it would be a mistake then to go, okay, well, the bear was here, it's time to go. Well,
Yeah.
what else is going to happen?
Yeah.
Maybe it's the third bear that shows up, where the light is really great, where he's doing something interesting, finally goes into the water, catches the salmon. And it's like, if I hadn't waited, like,
Yeah.
do you really just want a picture that goes, well, that's what a bear looks like? Or do
Yeah.
you want to wait it out until you get the picture that makes you go, oh my God, that's what it feels like to be in
Yeah.
the presence of that, that
Yeah.
story, that mood, whatever. For
Well,
me, that takes a long time.
that's a good reminder for all of us to look for that arc, the way arc, how does our arc work when we're shooting? That's a good reminder to look for that. I think of Anne Lamott and Bird by Bird, and that's where the,
Love that bird. A
yeah,
bird. I love that book. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I
Yeah.
think,
Well, she talks about making shitty first drafts. Am
yes.
I allowed to
So
say that?
yes, absolutely. So I'll let you say it because I told my kids I was going to say it, and they're like, "We're going to find it then and replay it over and over." And
Replay it all day long, but it is important.
it
And
is so important.
she also talks about having this radio station in your head, that's constantly, I think she calls it, WKRP, like W crap or something. I can't remember
Yeah,
exactly. It's not WKRP, that's the TV show, but
I know.
and it's constantly broadcasting
Right.
this nonsense in your head.
Yeah.
Bird by Bird is a book about writing,
Yes.
but there is so much that's similar with between writing and photography. And
Absolutely.
frankly, I think many creative endeavors,
Hmm.
there are parallels that we can learn from. And because I'm a writer, maybe I see them a little bit more acutely.
Yeah.
But it's important. You've got to no writer sits down and just like ring,
Right.
there it
First
is.
draft is perfect.
The first draft is just to get it out there and then
Absolutely.
look at all the holes and go, okay, that needs fixing. That's good. That's worth salvaging. And that's how it is when I photograph. I'm constantly looking. I'm not usually chimping because I'm conscious of the fact that life is still going on in front of me.
Right.
But as you're photographing, to be like, okay, this is working, but that's not. I'm not feeling this, but that. How can I? There's so many changes, and you're constantly refining that draft
Right.
and you get closer and you get closer. And usually for me, there's a moment where I'm just like that. I don't recognize it at the time, but that's when flow hits, when I'm just like,
I was going to say, yeah.
I'm out of my rut and into my groove and things are going okay. And sometimes something happens and I get a great photograph. Other times I get back and I'm like, man, I was so close. Like everything, man. But you look at those pictures and go, if there was a thing in there, what a great composition.
Yeah.
And it encourages me the next time to wait a little
I was going to
longer. It
say that
encourages me to,
prepares you for the next time.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
don't always hit, but
Yeah.
sometimes what a waste it would be if we went away thinking, that was a waste of time. Like, well, I didn't, didn't get the shot. Well, okay, you didn't get the shot, but you were in the presence of a bear. You
That's right.
were there with this thing. The photograph, forget the photograph for now.
Yeah.
But what a waste it would also be if you didn't learn something from that and go, okay, what is transferable from this experience? Did I need to be in a different place?
Right.
Was I just talking to the photographer for beside me too much and I missed the moment? Was I, like, what can you change?
Yeah.
And then learn from that. One of the biggest lessons I ever learned, because for so long, Jen, our cameras, like if I put my camera on ISO 800, I'd be like, oh my God, this is going to be awful. And it gets, because you'd have just gigantic grain and noise,
Yeah.
and technology has come to the point where I don't even think about my ISO anymore.
Yeah.
It's just,
We're pushing it now.
but
Yeah.
for a long time, I was hedging that bet. And so I had my shutter speed would continue to drop as the light fell. And I had some incredibly noise-free pictures of blurry bears. What was I thinking? Like, I look back and I go, was I eating gummies? Like, what was, so I've realized, okay, those blurry pictures of bears, they cannot be salvaged, but a sharp picture that had some noise, I could have gone
It's
back and
better.
fixed that.
Yeah, that's right.
That was a tough lesson learned. And as some of you, I'm watching the participants here. I'm waiting to see everyone dropping off, going, "This guy's an idiot. He's a
No,
moron. Why are we
everyone
listening
loves
to
it
him?"
and they're loving our book recommendations. And so thanks everybody. And if you want to, you can put questions in the Q&A right now. There's a Q&A box. And if you have questions for David, go ahead and put those there. I'm sure you do, because I have a million. I think I've shown my book a couple of times. I've got Post-it notes and highlights and everything. I think the other writing skill or knowledge that transferred over to photography for me was like kill your darlings.
Mm,
I'd write this wonderful chapter and it'd be like, oh, I love it so much, and it maybe
mhm.
wouldn't go over that well with my writing group. It's the same with my photographs. I love that photograph. I love it. And I have to remember okay, wait, what's in that frame that should have been out of the frame? And how could you have edited that in the field to make that a
Mhm.
better photograph? So that reminds me of your book Within the Frame a lot.
Oh, thank you. I,
Uh,
I think we conflate the experience of photographing a thing with the resulting photograph. And so we will read a picture in a way that no one else will.
yeah,
Sometimes a photograph is really not a great photograph, but it's a great memory. And if we
right.
can separate the two in our mind, that's good. But it's sometimes hard to, ask yourself, okay, but does the person that wasn't there, can all of the things that make it good for me, does it? And sometimes not. And that's okay. It is
Yeah.
okay that it's not really a photograph or not really a great photograph, but it's a great memory that it goes on. Like, let's get existential for a moment, folks. When you are on your deathbed, if you have the luxury of such a thing, you will not be looking at all the shit that won a prize. You will be looking at the stuff that was the most meaningful to you, that was the strongest memory. And some of it's going to be blurry. Some of it's going to have noise. Some of it's going to be under and overexposed. And you're not going to care. You are not going to care.
Yeah.
So there is a big picture here.
Yeah.
And I think the big picture is the human experience. And uh, to quote Winnie the Pooh, this is all too important to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
Like we do
Yeah.
need to kind of lighten up a little at a certain point. As my friend Zach Arias once said, we're not curing cancer here.
Right. Right. I
So
totally need
it's
to remember that.
okay,
I totally need to
right?
remember that.
It's it's okay that it's just a, I mean, I say just as if it's, it's a second thing, that it's just a great memory. No, that is such an important, wonderful thing. It just means maybe don't put it on Instagram. It means maybe it does when you're putting your book together or your exhibition,
Mhm.
that's when you kill your darlings, because
Yeah.
they should really be the most you as possible. And they should be the images that happen at the intersection of what other people are going to resonate with. No, they have, it first has to be you.
Right.
You are your own audience. It cannot be like, I would never post a picture on Insta that I was like, well, other people will like this. Well, if I don't like it, what's the point? Like,
Right.
what are we doing here?
Right.
But if you can get the picture that does both, that is the most you and also is pragmatically, it expresses the thing well, that it's going to resonate with them. I think that's where kill your darlings is important.
Mhm.
um, is the when it goes into the world and what you want is impact.
Yeah.
Then it's not just like, oh, here's the memory I had, because no one's going to read it that way. It's here's a piece of something that will resonate, and that's a harder thing to come to, and that takes work. It takes that humility to present your work to others. Stop asking the internet about their opinions of things.
Right.
Have some people in your back pocket that you can show your work to and say, like, tear me a new one, folks. Like, look at this, tell me what's good, tell me what's not working for you, so
Mhm.
that they help you see your blind spots. We're so, Instagram helps us not see our blind spots. It helps reinforce that, that our poop doesn't stink. But we need people that are
Yeah.
like, yeah, it stinks.
Yeah. I
And you
have
go, okay,
someone
what
that I
would make
say
it
that with.
better?
Yeah. I
Yeah,
say, just be brutal with me.
yeah.
Just tell me.
Just,
I want to know. Yeah.
because I want my work to be better. I want to be better.
Right.
I don't need to, I can pat myself. I have people in my life that'll pat me on the back. That's what Instagram's for. That's what your mom's for, right? Your mom will always put your art on the fridge.
Yeah.
Great. You also need someone that's going to be like, okay, but someone who's going to do it in context of
Right.
dialogue. And this is where
Right.
I think image critique is very challenging, because too often it's like, well, if I was going to do it, well, look, go make your own damn picture, because it's not your
Right.
picture, it's mine. So
Right.
let's have a conversation. If critique doesn't happen in the context of conversation, like, so here's what I feel about your picture, but I want to know what you were trying to accomplish.
Mhm.
How
Mhm.
did you want me to feel about it? What story were you trying to tell? And then let me tell you whether I feel that lands or not. And let's explore some options for what choices you might have made to do that better. Could you have? Well, no, I couldn't because of okay, well, what about, well, okay, but like, it happens
Yeah.
it's messy,
Yeah.
it's organic, and you need those to expect that from Insta. I'll never understand why people put on Insta, they're like, I couldn't decide whether, I wanted to do this in black and white or color. What do you think? Who cares?
Right.
It drives me crazy because I'm like, you're the artist. You tell me.
Yeah.
You tell
Right.
me
I've done that before, and I know which one I like, but I'm playing
right?
the game, and I'm like, why am I
It's
playing the game? It's a
it's a
game.
total game. I
Yeah.
mean, we've all done it. We all ask the
Yeah.
question that we to hear the answer that we want to hear, but it doesn't grow us as artists. It doesn't
Right.
push us forward. I'm
Right.
not suggesting for a minute that I don't do things for, for my own, like I still want people to say, wow, you're really, because life is hard enough. A couple extra people in my life saying, wow, you did that pretty good. Okay,
Well, it is
great.
vulnerable to put your work out there, even if it
It
is
can be.
Instagram and we're used to it. It's still like I'm putting it out there, and if I don't get enough likes, that's what I would love for you to talk about a little bit, even just for a second. It's like
Oh, let's bring it.
I have seen this recently, and I feel really bad for people. A lot of us are. I'm about I'm about 7 years in, and so I'm still got that passion and like really excited and like still sort of nervous about what I'm putting out there. And Instagram makes it, I mean, on a day, it could be up here or down here, and I let it affect me way too much. And I know there are people that I follow and that follow me that feel the same way, and I see them down in the dumps. And and I have listened to you before. I remember one time you sent an email, a video, and it was a video of you talking, and it was exactly the right thing I needed to hear. It was basically like, screw everybody on social media, do what you do. And I have to remind myself that a lot, but I do see people emotionally affected by this in real ways, in
It,
wildlife
it,
photography. And I feel
of,
bad. I don't want them to
yeah.
feel that way.
Well, we feel deeply, we care
Yes.
deeply, and
Yes.
so I think, it's important to recognize that the more we care, uh, the more risk of being hurt. However, here's my assessment of social media and comments, especially comments,
Yeah.
is we are using, it's like using a measuring tape to try to determine the temperature in a room. You use a thermometer for that, not a measuring tape.
Right. Right.
It's the wrong measuring tool. It's not that the thing we're after, that affirmation, is bad. It's you're using the wrong tool.
Right.
It's not calibrated for that. It cannot possibly be. We don't know the algorithm. We don't know who it may be that you only got 5 comments because it only got seen by 6 people.
Right.
And only 5 of those were people, they were all your mom. And that's okay. That's fine. But why, like, I don't go to Insta for that. I quit social for several years. I was like, I'm
Yeah.
done. And the only
Yeah.
reason I came back, my criticisms of social haven't changed. In fact, they've grown. I just missed the interaction with
Right.
actual human beings.
Right.
The people that are going to talk shit. I mean, I don't attract that kind of person for the
Yeah.
most part because I don't
Yeah.
talk about gear, but I'm terrified of my work going viral. Fortunately for me, I don't think I have that kind of risk. But I'm scared about going viral. I don't want my work to go viral because it just means an entire portion of the world that doesn't know what I'm trying to do, what I'm about. They
Right.
don't know my backstory, is going to chime in and they're going to chat, 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 and I don't want to hear it. I'm not strong enough for that. I am
Yeah.
emotionally too immature to deal with my stuff going viral.
Yeah.
But I put my work on there so that that one person that I can maybe leave that I can have a conversation with, that I can post a picture and say, this one was challenging because of this. And someone goes, oh my God, it's so good to hear you say that.
Yeah.
So I have a very specific reason for being on social. It's not for any other reason than to introduce people to my ideas and thoughts, and have a little bit of a dialogue.
Yeah. That's great.
If you go there for your emotional well-being, you're in the wrong place for that. You've picked the wrong tool.
Yeah.
And if you are gauging your popularity or how, God help you, how good the world thinks your photographs are, you've picked the wrong instrument to measure
Yeah.
a thing for which it's not calibrated.
That's a good message. That's a really good message. I mean, I just feel for people who are like have real depression over it. They're working really hard at their images and it's just not going well. And it just makes me sad. I mean, I definitely have ups and downs about it, but you have to just pull yourself back out of it. Like, this isn't real. This is a corporation that's making billions of dollars. This isn't real. It's real people that I really enjoy and have made really good friends, but it's not real criticism and worth. You say that somewhere. It's not your, they can what do you say? It's not your worth that they should be comparing. It's not your worth you should be comparing. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what you're saying. It's like you shouldn't take it on and inside as your self-worth, which is,
I mean, it's hard not to.
it's not, yeah.
It's hard. It's very easy for me to, blah, 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 and preach about this stuff. And yet the minute we're off and I look on Insta, if someone's left a bad, a
Yeah.
negative, my 8-year-old could have done that, or,
Oh,
you know,
goodness.
the worst is actually, I take it more personally in my writing. I will never forget when Within the Frame came out. I think I was pretty close to a nervous breakdown because I was
Oh,
not
no.
prepared to be on as big a stage as I suddenly was. Within the Frame did very, very well and exposed me to a whole world of people that I didn't know, they didn't know me. And suddenly on Amazon, there it is. Suddenly on Amazon, there's a review that's like, the guy called me, what did he call me? Like
Oh, no.
fat, bald and ugly,
Oh, no.
and I'm like, I'm not that bald. Like, well, I am now,
Goodness.
but it was like, shut up, DuChemin, you're fat, bald, and ugly. And I'm like,
That's
wow. But
horrible. That
it
someone took the
was,
time to do that.
and yet,
Horrible.
I was just after I had some time to recover, I was like, just shut up and go back to your mom's basement and watch Star Trek and just
That's
like,
right. That's right.
but I didn't have this was my first exposure to it. The more you care, the more deeply you're going to be hurt by this kind of stuff. And I think it's really important that you not stop caring just so it doesn't hurt as much.
Yeah.
Maybe limit your exposure to this. Maybe stop asking the internet for their opinion.
Yeah.
Maybe don't read the comments. Maybe limit your time.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
God, we spend so much time on these devices.
Yeah.
Stop. Like when you need that dopamine hit, go create something. Go
Right.
make something, or pick up an actual book and look at the photographs instead of just this endless scroll.
Study, not scroll. Yep. Yeah. We need
I
t-shirts on
think, I mean, I spend more money on photography books than almost anything else. On actual, I mean, after you've bought Light, Space, and Time, go buy books of, and that's why I put like actual photographs.
Yeah, they're
I
beautiful.
don't like, I don't, my pictures have nothing to do with the book itself. They're put in there in part to kind of create a rhythm, but also because I know that people, when they look at a photograph, education's as much about lighting a fire as filling a bucket. My words will fill a bucket, but I want to light a fire.
Mm.
And I think there's value in photographers looking and studying and going, okay, why does that work?
Right.
Why is that picture of a bear make me feel a certain way? Is it the light? Is it the aperture, the point of view, what decision? If I can encourage a little of that, and help someone's palate get a little bit refined,
Yeah.
I think that's a good thing, but that's time way better spent, and you will feel so much better about it. When
Yeah.
you close a book, there's a different feeling than when you look at your phone and go, frig, why am I on this? I picked it up for some reason. I've been on it for an hour,
Exactly. Exactly. It's horrible. I'm like, when did I become this person? I don't, oh, it's an addiction. I know. I feel the same way. And when I did start this podcast in August, we did get a comment from the first one on physical appearance, and I had another woman guest. So for us, it was very hard. Like I felt really bad that happened, and it was just so inappropriate. So, so inappropriate. But you have to just like, okay, why am I doing this? It is to build community with and really kind people are on this with me. And so that's what you have to remember. There are really kind people that love what I love. And it's just so fun to talk about it. Like I can't really talk about it with many people in my real life here. So that's what I find on Instagram are the people that have the same passion and want to talk about this all day long. So that's what I have to keep my focus on is I just can't.
Yeah, and I think, Jen, you have to remember that there's always one person in the crowd. I think the fact that we've given everyone a microphone
Mm-hmm.
is not a good thing. Not everyone should
Right.
have a microphone. There are
Right.
mean people who get off on being mean.
Yeah.
I was bullied all the way through school. I'm very sensitive to the idea of people bullying each other.
Yeah.
But there are people out there who just do it. And it's like suddenly the world has become an open mic night with an open bar with no limits,
That's
and
so
everyone's
true.
got a friggin' microphone and there's no bouncer.
That's so true.
And so if you're on stage and you don't recognize that you are performing in that context, and you're sidelined every time some drunk asshole stands up and goes, "Ah, if I were you, I'd be blah blah." It can sideline you,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
what a shame if it does that
Yeah.
and pushes you further away from being vulnerable with your art, from trying new things. What a
Yeah.
shame if it inflicts a wound that is even deeper than the one you're trying to heal with your art. And
Yeah.
so
Absolutely.
we just
So
need to
true.
be mindful of this. It is a dangerous tool,
Yeah.
it's a chainsaw, and it can do some really great things, or it can, lop a leg off. So just be
Yeah.
mindful.
Yeah. And I just believe everybody has a art to give to the world. And it's like, I want to encourage people that too. Don't give up just because someone says something bad. I have messaged people when I see them just like going down. It's like, no, don't go down. It's okay. Your work is great. You're doing what you love. Stay with it. Don't worry about the likes. And, I don't want people to feel invisible. And I think people do, but, you know, it is part, a lot of us creatives do have deep feelings and deep emotions. So maybe that's part of it too.
Always. And it has always been the
Yes.
case. I mean,
Yes.
read about the life of Vincent van Gogh,
I was going to say, yeah.
yeah, there's always the other person, there's always the egoist for whom everything goes right. And
Right.
why them and not me? I don't know. But,
But
keep your eye on the price. It's very hard to make good art when you're looking
yeah,
over your shoulder.
yeah, that's true. You have a whole chapter on that
I,
about.
I do indeed.
Okay, here we do have a few questions
In my new book, did I
in your
mention
new
I wrote
book,
a
Light,
book?
Space, and Time. So we do have a question. Any plans to do a book tour, and maybe come to Ireland? Someone wants to know.
Um, Not really. So much is, I mean, it would be wonderful, but
Yes.
uh, there's no bears in Ireland to my
Right.
knowledge. No, and I'm, no, book tours are hard because unless you can show up with, a whole trailer full of books to
Yes,
sell,
that's so true.
it's hard to make them even pay for themselves. It's so
Hmm.
much. I think things like this, doing a virtual book tour is way better
Hmm.
because you don't have to pay for it. It's free, and you can, if you want to support me, you can buy a book on Amazon, and
Yeah.
they'll send me $1 or something.
Yeah.
But no immediate plans. If I'm
And
going to travel, I'm very conscious of my carbon footprint. And if I'm going to
yeah.
travel at all, it's going to be um, I'm going to try to get as much in as I can. Having said that, I am coming to the photography show in London in March.
Okay.
That may be for, the closest I'm going to come to Ireland. I realize it's not the
Okay.
same thing.
Well, they
Uh,
can look that up. That's good.
but I am coming, and I'll be lecturing, and I'll be signing books and
Oh,
that
that's
sort of
fun.
thing.
And
So
when is
yeah.
that again?
It's in March. If
Okay.
you just search for the photography show London,
Okay.
I think March 8th, 9th, 10th, something like that. The itinerary is up there for who's speaking when.
Okay.
Um,
That's great.
Excuse me, but I'll be around signing books like that. So anyone that's over the pond, I will have just come back from Kenya, so I'll be wildly jet lagged. I'll be totally incoherent, but still able to sign my name. Um, yeah.
Everyone remember that too. Be kind.
I
Okay.
did see someone left a question here. Karen said, "Do you ever use a drone?"
Mm-hmm.
Um, no, I have one. In fact, I've had several of them. I've lost a couple. I see the potential for them. For a long time, I was stuck on the thought that a drone was really more a video thing, until I kind of got my head around the fact that actually it's just a point of view tool, like to be able to get a camera here or there.
Yeah.
Or so I have one. I usually have one in the truck when I travel.
Mhm.
But because I'm doing wildlife, a drone is not. There's so much possibility for that POV shot, that context shot, but I'm not going to, drift a drone out 5 meters from a bear or above a
Right.
herd of elephants or anything.
Right.
Mostly for the animals, but also if I were there and some jerk flew a drone, I'd be furious.
Right.
I am
Exactly.
more likely to book helicopter time and get into a helicopter when I've been able to.
Hmm.
because nothing has ever made me feel more like an action hero than being out of a doors off helicopter, leaning over. I mean, that photograph is a great example where you can be in a helicopter with some distance away from the flamingos. And yeah, you're encouraging with the way the heli flies, you're encouraging those flamingos to be where you want them in the shot. But I've never found a drone. I couldn't do this with a drone. I wouldn't be able to get high enough. I wouldn't be able
Yeah.
to. I'd have to. It's its own skill set.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe that's what I'm saying. But
It is a beautiful
drone.
image.
I worry about drones.
Well, I'm in a national park a lot, so I don't even have the option. So, yeah, and like you said, it's another skill set. And right now I feel like I'm learning the skill sets I need. And then if someday, if that's a risk I want to take or a curiosity I want to have, then I'll pick it up.
Mm.
But,
Yeah. Yeah, I
but
agree.
I think you talk about this image and shoot what it feels like too, don't you? Am I remembering that right? Is
I
that,
might. I
I
can't
think you
remember.
edit through that. I think you edited through that with us.
I probably do. Yeah.
I can't remember. I've looked at so much David DuChemin stuff lately. I'm like, I think that's where that was too, but okay, let's see. Another question. Sherry asks, what tips and advice do you wish you had heard when you started out that could help those beginning their professional journey? Oh dear.
No, that's such a great question. It's
Yeah,
such a big, I mean,
I was gonna say,
so all of the things I just spent the last hour saying, that,
yeah.
but if I were to condense it, which is not my strong suit, brevity. I did have one, speaking of Amazon reviews, I did have one Amazon review on I think the French version of Within the Frame. And this, if you know your French at all, even if you don't, this should still translate. The title of the review was Beaucoup de blah blah, which is, a lot of blah blah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm like, yeah, that's fair. I have been accused of liking my words, and I do. So that's my caveat. Brevity is not my thing. If someone had said, focus on the creative as much or more than the technical, if someone had said, I've been for years in Within the Frame, I wrote, gear is good, but vision is better. And that has been a source of misunderstanding for a long time, because people are like, I know you don't like to talk about gear. I'm like, oh, I'd love to talk about gear. I want to talk about it in reference to what we're trying to accomplish, our vision, expression, discovery, all of that. The cameras matter, but they're insufficient. And so I wish earlier someone had said, pay a lot of attention to your craft, learn everything you can, but as much as you do that, also pay attention to storytelling. I know so many photographers, and not every story has to be, or not every photograph has to be a story. Some photographs are pure poetry. That's fine. Some are illustrative. That's fine. But if you're trying to accomplish story, I know so many photographers, they've got business cards that, visual storyteller, and I couldn't have a conversation with them about what the actual basics of storytelling are, because they don't know. It's like, if you really want to tell a story, you sure better know how to tell a story. So study it.
Yep.
Study the creative stuff. How many color photographers out there don't understand basic color theory and couldn't tell you, well, they couldn't name 3 different color harmonies? Yes, it's nerdy stuff. But if you're watching a movie, you should be able to go, oh, that's that kind of color harmony. That's that kind of, because those are our tools as color photographers. Color either is mixed well, or it's mixed poorly. Do you understand that stuff? Like and yes, that's part of the craft stuff, but that's where it bleeds into the art, and it bleeds into, so I think that's what I would focus on is, don't get so carried away by the gear. Like it's not a this or that thing. And that's where the people that go, well, you said gear's good, but vision's better. I'm not saying gear's not good.
Right.
It's a whole, we're complex people, folks. We can hold 2 things to be true at once.
Both and.
We're not 7 years old anymore. So there's some room for some nuance here.
Yep.
It's both. The greater your skill at your craft, the more able you will be to express your vision, the more creative possibilities there will be than for someone who doesn't know the basics of, if you're frustrated photographing wildlife because you don't understand at least the focus modes that you might need to capture that thing that's sharp, that's moving quickly. Your craft, if it is equal to the task, will help you make the better photographs, the ones that you envisioned. So it's not a this or a this, it's a this. And
Yeah.
I guess the reason I'm harping on this is because the photography industry concentrates so much on this. And when it talks about this hand, it's a little embarrassed, it's a little self-conscious. And because it doesn't talk about it a lot, it lacks the vocabulary, it lacks the nuance and the depth. And so I like to think, when I'm lying awake at night wondering if I'm making any difference in this world, I like to think that that's my place, is to help people through my books, through my writing, through my contact sheet emails, and the courses I make, to develop a vocabulary, to bring this hand, right, which anyway, bring both hands, together and give, right? I've lost track of which hand is which. God, a visual metaphor, terrible idea.
Well, that's good. Let me see. I thought we had one more question. Oh, it's
There
gone.
may be some in the chat, because I
Maybe
did see
check it
some. I
out.
did. Thank you, by the way, Karen. Yes, I do sell prints of my work. There's not a single place that you can go, because prints are so. It's like, well, which size and what media and which image, and it's just, I don't have a print shop. So if you're interested, get in touch with me through my website, and I'd be very interested to set you up with something. Do you edit? So here's a great one. Do you edit Photoshop a lot of your work? I think that requires a conversation, because yes, I edit all of my work. I usually refer to editing as selecting a bunch of images down to my keepers, and I think of my Lightroom / Photoshop work as the development and the refining, the post-processing. But I know that's not what you're asking. Every image that comes out of a camera that's shooting in RAW will require some work. And the camera, as much as I talk about it, as I talk about seeing the way the camera sees and whatever, the camera it doesn't do everything for us.
Right.
And post-production, even all the way back to my darkroom days, I was dodging and burning and playing with the tonal values. And so, yeah, I do. And I don't believe there are rules. So I'm not suggesting that the way that I do it is the way everyone should do it. But I don't replace skies, for example. I don't engage in a lot of heavy handing. Like, if a scene is a scene, I don't put an extra bear into it because 3 is better than 2.
Right.
But will I remove a branch or a twig? Absolutely. Will I dodge down, or sort of burn down a bright rock? Yeah, absolutely. Will I change the color? Jen, do you have that picture there with the rhinoceros in the middle of an orange field?
I do.
With,
It's
well,
right here.
it's this one. Like, it's it's that one behind me, and it
This is the right
plays.
one, right? I think.
It
No,
is,
maybe it's
yeah,
not.
and
Okay.
it's more vibrant behind me because
Yes.
it's all lit up and stuff.
Yeah.
But this was, I didn't add anything to this except maybe I pulled a grass out of, there was a grass right in the way of the rhino's eye. But I made the grasses a little bit more orange. I warmed them up. I changed the hue of the sky to be a little more cyan, because I was trying something. I was doing a series that I wanted to be a little bit more storybook, a little bit more interpretive. And orange and cyan, going back to, understanding our color
I was gonna
harmonies,
say
orange and
there's color
cyan
theory.
are complementary to each
Yeah.
other, and they work better together. And so this looks quite different in terms of hue and saturation and luminosity values than my raw file. So, but did I add clouds? No. Did I, I added a little clarity to the clouds to punch them up. I probably darkened the sky just a little, sometimes, but that's just the old school work of dodging and burning on a level that includes not just luminance, but hue and saturation. And but I don't Photoshop my images so much as do kind of what I would
Right.
call enhanced darkroom
Right.
work. But again, I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't do that. It's not my way. I
Right.
make photographs for certain reasons, and that work would dissatisfy me. It would feel, I don't even want to say cheating because I hate the idea that there are rules, but for me, it would go beyond a point at which uh, it would go beyond a point that satisfies, that scratches my itch, and suddenly I would be doing stuff I don't want to do.
Yeah.
But I do want to be very careful to say that I don't believe there are any rules. I'm not a journalist. Journalists are held to their own standard and they can figure that out themselves.
Yeah.
I want, my only rule is, does it resonate? And is it honest? Is it honest to me?
That's a good
Am I
question.
misrepresenting a scene? I don't think that changing the color values misrepresents. It tells a different story. And I think you look at it and you're not like, hang on a sec, is that really the color of the sky? Like you know enough to know that, okay, this feels, but I'm not putting a juggler on the back of the rhino.
Back
I'm
to the
not
juggler.
adding kittens. I'm not, like, so, but we all figure that out. I know that's not the question you're asking. So yes, I do edit my work.
Yeah, I think people ask that a lot now just because of AI and everything that's going on with that too. It's like in the back of everyone's mind, maybe.
Yeah, and I've always said, before the AI thing became a consideration, I've always said, it's not like is it the camera never lies? Of course not. The camera will tell any lie you want it to.
Right.
So it's not, people say, well, I don't know if I can trust photographs. Look, you have never been able to trust photographs ever. Yeah. You trust the storyteller or you don't trust the storyteller. Right. And now I think that conversation is getting much bigger because now it's AI. Unfortunately, AI is so bad that it's so easy to recognize, especially in video.
Yes. I hope it stays that way.
Just look at the hands. As soon as the bear has like 12 claws on each, it's like, hang on a sec. Big pointy triangle claws.
Well, Maureen asked, and Maureen is one of the people that really encouraged me to start this podcast. We discussed in Alaska. We met on the last day, she and Jenny Cannon, and I had all been on workshops in Alaska this summer and met in Anchorage for the day on our, tired and exhausted, but glad to see each other and just discuss the need to build community and share more voices, especially those of women. And I think a lot of us in those mid-size accounts just feel like, hey, we're really passionate about this and we want to talk about it. So anyway, there's a long way to get around to Maureen asks, how important is it to build community on Instagram? And how are you doing that?
That's a great question, Maureen.
It is a great question.
How important? I think it depends on what you are trying to accomplish as a teacher, which I consider myself not just by profession, but by calling. Is when I returned to photography, I knew I wanted to do humanitarian work and I knew I wanted to teach. It has always been incredibly important to me. And I think as a result, community is very important to me. I don't think about community. I'm still a Lone Ranger. I think I do have a community that I've built around myself rather accidentally, a little bit ad hoc. But I would replace that word. Connection is really important to me because most often the interactions I have with people, someone sends me an email and says, oh my God, I just read your latest book or your latest article, and I felt like you were speaking right to me, and I've always struggled with this, and this is what's going on. And that's not a community building thing. That's a connection thing, one-on-one. Mm-hmm. So, but again, it's like, where does community end and connection? Maybe it's two words for the same thing on a different scale. Mm-hmm. But for me, it's very important. But I don't go out of my way to like have conversations with multiple people. Right. On some level, I think because art is something, it's quite solitary. And though community can serve us, we're still all going to go back to that place of solitude where we do our work. Mm-hmm. And I've always operated a little bit more solitary. When you read my email that comes every second Sunday and you read an article that I've written for that, you read it in the quiet of your own home and it touches a nerve, or doesn't, that's very solitary. Yeah. So, yeah. And so community, not so much, but connection for me is everything. And anyone that is trying to teach, anyone that's trying to sell, and I think selling can be done incredibly well. Selling is a human activity. It's the meeting of needs and provision of value. Right. That happens through connection, and that's everything to me. The reason I put up an IG post, the reason I do all of this is for that connection. It's to make a difference in someone's life. It's not to to get likes. And I mean, those things are nice, but that's not why I do it.
Yeah.
I've got plenty of people in my life who like me. I'm at this point, I'm a little bit beyond it. Maybe I'm just,
So
it's
true. I
so fed
understand
by
that.
my cynicism, but the connection is everything. And you will not build a business without connection.
That's true.
I don't think, not a business that you'll feel good about. You won't teach without connection. And I think many of us make photographs in the hopes that it will connect with people, make them feel something, make them curious about something, make them donate to a local conservation project or get involved, or, you know, do some kind of thing that's more than just simply, you know, again, that scroll, the scroll,
Right.
that's
Right.
a very, it exists in a world that doesn't actually make a difference,
Yeah.
but we can, right?
Right.
And so
Right.
I don't know if that answers the question, Maureen, but again, we crave connection. We want to be understood. We want to feel something more. And so if connection does that, then I'm all for it.
And I hear the word conversation with you a lot. You say and you did just now. It's a conversation. That's true. When we were talking about
Yeah, if
speak, you said that as well.
I like to think so, although when I get into kind of, you know, preacher mode, I admit that the words come fast and long, and there's not a lot of time for, you know, it takes me a while to come up for air while everyone else going, yeah, but so it's a bit of a one-sided conversation sometimes. But I get so much, and this is the value, I get so much from the people that do reach out and send me an email, and uh, that's where the conversation can occur, when
Right.
it's quieter, when I'm not in preacher mode, and I can listen, and I'm not trying to, that's, people just want to be heard, you know.
Yeah.
And I think we have to remember that with things on IG. Sometimes the hateful comments come from people that, you know, I mean, whatever else their issues are, they just want to be
Right.
heard.
Right. Right. Right.
And I think it's important that we not escalate that. I don't think we necessarily need to reply either, but it
Right.
might be
Right.
helpful to go, you know, I don't know what struggle this guy is, as much as this guy's an asshole. I don't know what he's going through, and
Right.
I'm going to just let it slide.
So true.
Because people just want to, and it is, so set aside the, you know, the drunken asshole with the mic on open mic night, the really well-intentioned people. This is where it is so valuable. All of this is so valuable to me, because
Absolutely.
I get so many emails from people saying, my photography is everything for me, because, and they'll tell me how, you know, their spouse died last year, and like these unraveling stories of human, you know, emotion. And what an honor that something that I wrote. My favorite ones are the ones where people write, and usually it's the women, because they're being a little more comfortable being vulnerable, but they're like, oh my God,
True.
I was just reading your book and it made me cry. And I'm almost ready to like get a checkboard for how many people I make
I
cry
just
every
wrote
week.
you that.
Right? Exactly.
I just
But I
wrote
get
you
so
that.
many.
We were writing back and forth.
I'll say, in just to round out that when I speak publicly, it is very rare that that I don't cry,
Aw.
because this
Yeah, yeah,
stuff
yeah.
matters to
It
me.
does. Yes.
And it's not just about, people always write and they say, you don't just write about photography, you write about life. And that's my great hope. One day I will write a book about how photography is a metaphor for life, how
Yeah.
photography done well helps us live life well,
Yeah.
because it does. I think most of us would agree that we don't pick up the camera to feel the buttons. We pick it up to feel alive, to perceive things,
Absolutely.
to be calm in a moment of chaos, to create, to tell us, or all of these things, they're really important to us for whatever reason. These bullshit technological plastic and steel glass, as frustrating as they are, they're also miraculous that they
Yeah.
can. My camera has taken me around the world. I'm deeply introverted. I've with a camera as a mediator, it has introduced me to species. I've been face to face with elephants and sharks and all kinds of stuff.
And people.
Species, people, cultures. I
Yeah.
mean, I was adopted by a tribe of Rendille folks in northern
I
Kenya and
remember reading
given,
that.
you know, given a Rendille name. When I had this accident in Italy years ago, I fell off.
Yes.
broke my feet, blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
They sent me a rungu, which is basically a war club that the men carry. And they had a day where they, like, the tribe got together and like prayed for Akeno, that's my Rendille name, prayed for me. There I am, broken in a hospital at the other
Oh
side of the
my
world.
goodness.
When
All
I think
remote
about
camera. Yeah.
right, the camera has nothing to do with it, and yet the camera was responsible for so much of it. So for those of you that every time you hear me get down on the camera, there's a flip side to that, which is it's kind of an irreverent reverence with
Right.
which I talk shit about my cameras, because for whatever reason they have enabled me to be more alive, to feel this, to connect with. We wouldn't be having these conversations
Right.
if I was doing something else. We'd be having maybe different conversations, but so
Yeah. Well,
anyway, coming up for air.
I want to show another photo, and just because this one reminds me of just being around the world and seeing these amazing things and being a part of something. This was a beautiful photo too.
Oh, thank you. There's a funny story behind that, because so that was my Samburu guide, northern, actually very close to where my this village that I was involved with. This is at a camp called Sarara Camp. You can go there and photograph giraffes and that sort of thing.
Mm.
This was actually their swimming pool, and so I said, because the mornings were so beautiful there, my guide would meet me. His name was Peter. He would meet me every morning, and one morning I gotta get a picture of this guy. So I said, can you walk to the edge of this pool? And it was just this very, like, it was a rock that had been sort of carved out. And so he just walked to the edge. And I guess he assumed that I was still sort of screwing around with my camera, because he was just kind of waiting there patiently, and he pulled out his phone. And initially, this goes back to that, being self-aware. Initially, I was actually kind of grumpy with, well, I didn't say it to him, but I was like, oh God, friggin' cell phones, can't get away from these goddamn phones. And then I realized this phone was not in the way of the shot. This phone was the photograph. I do these seminars about storytelling and how at the heart of it is like juxtaposition. And here's this
And here it
beautiful
is.
juxtaposition of old and modern. And, and I'm like, stop bitching and take the damn photograph. And it's like so much of it. And I talk about this in the book. I talk about everything in the book. But luck.
Well, that's why I have so many Post-it notes.
Well, apparently no, you know what it is? It's why I keep writing books, because I get to the end of one and someone says, "What's your next book?" And I'm like, I'm all written out. I have nothing left to say. But apparently I have lots left to say. But luck, so
you
much
talk
of
about
this,
luck in it.
set everything aside, and yes, preparation, blah, blah. At the end of the day, so much of this, aren't we so lucky that we get those moments when the bear does turn and look at us, or looks up, or, catches the fish, or, walks into the sunbeam, or it would be so
Absolutely.
great if we could take all the credit, but we
It's
can't.
absolutely true.
And
That
so,
magic and the luck, it keeps us going.
and isn't that where the little, the gems are? Isn't that when you come home and you're like, all my preparation? Now, sometimes it's like, all my preparation, I got nothing. But other times, like, all my preparation, and in the end, it was a shot of a guy with a cell phone,
It's
and
a
I didn't
great
even,
shot.
if it was up to me, I would have had him throw the cell phone, and I would have, if it was up to me, I would have made a worse photograph than what
It's
I
kind of
ended
both
up
your
with.
worlds coming together, humanitarian and wildlife. It just has both those worlds in
a,
it too.
a little bit. At the end of the
Yeah,
day, we're all just monkeys with clothes on. The problem is I don't really like monkeys that much. So someone recently asked me why don't you do humanitarian work? And I said, well, part of the prerequisite for that job is actually liking human beings, and I've found it increasingly challenging. I like my people. I just don't.
I said
I'm
by a
having a
true
tough time
introvert. I
with.
totally understand. I'm sure my husband is
Yeah,
listening to this and just like, that's totally me too.
yeah.
Well, I just want to tell you that I have felt totally a part of your community, and I look forward to your contact sheet and everything that comes in your emails. I do feel like, that your work and your words have inspired my photography tremendously.
Thank you.
So thank you for that. I
You're
mean,
welcome.
I count just a few people that have done that for me, and you're one of them. So I really appreciate it. And
That means a
I
lot to
mean,
me. Thank you.
so I mean, I got your note. I told you this, I got your note while I was sitting in the hospital with my dad, and it was just kind of like, that was magic for me. So I'm just really thankful that you reached out, and it's been a rich discussion. I could talk hours and hours about all of this. So I just really
Yeah. Well, you're
appreciate
very
what you've
welcome.
done for
Let's,
all of us, and all your community that you've built. You have built a community.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're out there, and it is, but we just, so, we're very disconnected. We don't
That's true.
very often
So
get
true.
together. And I have these moments where I'll take, 9 or 10 people on a trip,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
those feel a little bit like family reunions to me,
Yeah.
because I look over and this guy's been to 6 different places with me,
Right.
and this guy's been to, and this woman has traveled the world with me, and now they know each other, and
Right.
that's really valuable. If I could say it just in a very self-serving, promoting kind of way,
Yeah.
if you're not getting my contact sheet,
Yes.
I hesitate to call it an email, because it's not an email. It's not, well, it is an email. It's not a newsletter, because it's never really about me. It's about the art and craft of photography. I send it out every 2 weeks. Once in a while, I will promote a course or whatever, but I'm diligent about, it's one of the things I love doing. And most of my subscribers have been subscribers for many, many years, and still open it every second Sunday. I send it out at the same time every second Sunday. If you're not getting it and would like to, go to mycontactsheet.com
Mhm.
and just tell me where to send it.
Yeah.
You can always unsubscribe. I will cry, but you will feel better if you know that there's an out. And the other thing is, other than, my book's available on Amazon, there's lots of them. And anywhere good books are sold, I'm sure an actual bookstore would love to take your business.
Mhm.
But if you would ever like to travel with me and be part of that community, I have what I call my adventure list. So I
Mhm.
will only send emails out if I'm running a trip to Kenya or a bear trip up, northern Canada or whatever. And that you can find at myadventurelist.net, not
Okay.
.com.
Okay.
Um, myadventurelist.net. So if that's a way that, that you can feel a little bit more connected to what I do,
Yes.
I would love to send you those contact sheets, and I'd love to see you. My adventures are a little different than most people. They're not workshops for the most part. They're shared experiences. But if you're paying attention, you will learn plenty.
Mhm.
But they're by application only, and we will have a Zoom call first, because the fit is really important to me, to make
Absolutely.
sure that the people that are coming are not only like-minded but like-hearted,
Yeah.
and on the same page, because these are like the best people in my life come from these trips. I met my wife on one of these trips.
Oh, it's
I've met all
amazing.
my best friends on these trips. So it's really important to me to get the right people, because
Yeah.
that is my only source of friendship. So
Yeah.
I need to make sure I dial it in.
Yeah.
But
It's very
anyway,
important. Yeah. And
I
people
thought I
can
thought
find you.
I just squeaks that in.
Yeah. And people can find you at your website as well, davidduchemin.com, and Instagram.
DavidDuchemin.com, or you can find me on it on Insta.
Yeah.
I'd love to have you follow me
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Absolutely. And
Wherever,
what I usually ask people what their plans are for the next year, but I'm going to ask you what you're curious about and what risks you're going to take this year.
Oh my God. Well, I'm gonna continue to try to dial in some of this remote stuff. I'm going to
Mhm.
Kenya in beginning of February for a month, and I
Mhm.
have some time with some rhinoceros that I want to get. Just, I don't even know what I'm trying to accomplish so much as I know that feeling of being really close with a wide angle lens. I want to see if I can
Yeah.
sort of make that more my own.
Yeah.
I'm going to the Grand Tetons for the first time. I'm very
Yes.
excited about that. I've
Yeah, we
got some
talked
bear
about that.
trips. I'm going
Yeah.
I'm going to Zambia, to the Valley of the Leopard,
Oh, wow.
for I'm taking a group of photographers there.
Mhm.
So yeah, a couple new things. I don't actually know yet. It's usually when I get into the situation that I'm like, oh, this is that thing that I
Oh,
gotta
that's
work on.
cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good reminder too, to always be looking and watching for that thing that you're waiting for.
Yeah, it's the challenge. I like the challenge. I
Yeah.
like trying that new thing, and because that's where I learn, and that's where the lessons or the reward are.
Right.
Um, it's always one or the other, unless I've
Yeah.
got, unless I'm being an idiot and I'm not paying attention, because the
Yeah.
lessons are always there.
Yeah. And it's a good, I mean, the book was a really good reminder to me to look at my frustrations with an open hand and heart, as not something negative, but something positive. And what direction do I need to move? And what risk do I need to take? What do I need to be curious about? And it truly was a good reminder for me. to, okay,
I,
maybe I've taken that moose shot way too many times.
yeah, well, exactly. And there's no harm in taking that moose shot again, but not to the exclusion of trying something new.
Right.
My big challenge is this year, I've been pretty open about it, and there's no easy way to sort of transition into the conversation about it. But I had after this big accident in Italy, it never healed right. And about a year and a half ago, I had my right leg amputated below the knee. And
Mhm.
I have found that my big challenges and big rewards have actually been through sort of my photography has been the thing that's taken me out of
Yeah.
my comfort zone. And but it's been challenging, carrying heavy
Right.
gear and getting on a moving boat and being on slippy surfaces and that. So in some ways it's kind of like I feel like I'm still at the sharp end of that learning
Yeah.
curve,
So that's only a year and a
figuring
half
out.
now, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and it's gone incredibly well.
Yeah.
But learning to, I'm jumping boxes in the gym and I'm doing leg presses
Wow.
and all this
Yes.
stuff. But
Yes.
so I feel very accomplished in that sense. But then the minute I put a backpack on and I'm carrying a camera, it's like, oh, it's a whole different thing. Um,
Absolutely.
so that's but I think challenge in any area of your life leads to growth, and that spills over into the photographs you make, and
Mm-hmm.
so I think that's probably the big thing,
Yeah.
learning to travel again,
Yeah.
but now as an amputee, and
Yes.
and now that like I did it so that I could do things that I haven't been able to do for the last 12 years. So
Yeah.
my adventures are taking me further, and we're doing more interesting things. So that will all drive that flywheel
Yeah.
of adventure and
Yeah.
creativity.
It's so cool. I mean, I think you do talk about it in the book that sometimes people's invisible journeys are not seen, and you can't compare that. You can't compare the growth that they have internally. And so that was really important too. I think that we all could embrace that and be
Mm,
a little easier on each other as well.
yeah,
Be a little more
yeah, I think so.
supportive of each other as well. Well, David, I thank you so much for
You're
joining
so
me.
welcome.
And it was
Thank
so
you.
fun. I would love to do it again if you ever want to. And I know
Absolutely.
I
You
know
say the
everyone
word.
enjoyed it too. Yeah. So I just thank you so much for your inspiration in my photography and for joining me today. And thank you everyone for joining us. Please go and find David's book, Light, Space, and Time on Amazon or any independent bookstores or bookstores near you. And all his other books, I've got a whole stack here, his courses, his podcasts. I've got it all, David.
Thank you. Well, it means the world to me. And anyone that's just, bought one and then it's like, yeah, that's not for me. I appreciate your courage, but those of you that have the perseverance to stick it out,
Yeah,
that's
stick it out. They're
everything.
great. They're amazing.
Thank
So I
you.
really thank you so much. And hey, maybe I'll see you in the Tetons.
I'd like that.
Have a great trip. All right.
Okay.
Thank you
Take
so
care,
much,
everyone.
David. Okay.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Bye.